Hey everyone, I want to talk today about protecting our accounts. And I wonder, what do you think when you talk about protecting your accounts? We talk about the login form, and we think about typically the controls we have around the login form. So brute force protections, right? So we have account lockout, different things like that. We have different complexity requirements around our passwords. We have CAPTCHAs on some systems, but not often that many. I've seen a few that use CAPTCHA, but to be honest, I know I can never use a CAPTCHA, so I'm sure other people struggle with that as well. And of course, we want usability. But then we also have other controls that are in place to help protect our account, like multi-factor authentication, to make sure that if somebody does get our password, if they're able to log in, at least hopefully they're stopped by that multi-factor authentication saying, oh, I can't get that second code. Now I can't get access to your account. But what happens when all this may fail? Or what happens if your application doesn't support multi-factor authentication for whatever reason? And people have all kinds of reasons out there for why they might not want to support multi-factor. A lot of times I hear that the users don't want to use it. It's too much of a burden on them to be able to do it. Maybe they don't have the technology. Whatever that may be. I think there was a report that came out, maybe not a report, but maybe just an article or so talking last year, and of course the beginning of this year, so that's not that long ago, talking about Gmail and the very low number of Gmail users that actually have multi-factor authentication enabled on their accounts. And multi-factor authentication is important because if your account gets compromised, that's kind of that last resort to stop somebody from gaining access. Right? We talked about credential stuffing before, where you reuse passwords on other sites and then all of a sudden that site gets hacked and they come and try to use that same username and password on this other site. And if you reuse, then they gain access to your account, and hopefully we got multi-factor there to help protect us. But what I want to talk about today is not the controls up front, but really the controls of what happens if somebody gets past all those controls. Say you don't have the multi-factor, or maybe even you do have the multi-factor, but for some reason they've gotten past that. Maybe they've used social engineering to get past it. Maybe they've gone to the great lengths to be able to take over your phone, so that way they can grab your SMS messages if that's what you're using to be able to gain access, whatever that may be. We've gotten past this. Well, we still need to know how it is that if somebody gains access to our account. So if somebody gets all the way past this, how do I know somebody's actually authenticated into my system? And I actually had a situation with this with somebody I know where all of a sudden in the middle of the night, their email account started sending a whole bunch of spam emails. And they wouldn't have known that somebody had somehow gained access to their account if it wasn't for some of those emails bouncing and getting those non-deliverable email messages that kicked back and were like, hey, what's this? And then, go to the sent items folder and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Somebody's doing something. We need to go and change the password, take some extra steps here. And so, of course, as soon as we changed the password, everything stopped. Everything seemed good. But there was no other indication that somebody may have logged into our account and started doing that. So in this case, having some sort of authentication alert that may come out and say, hey, you just logged in at, is a great extra step to be able to notify you. And I had this years ago with my Yahoo Mail account. Yahoo spent their time in the news, where all of a sudden I got an email saying there had been a successful authentication into my email account. Now, I don't use my Yahoo email account for anything. It's old. And even back then, and this was a few years ago, it was old then. So I don't use it. But of course, somebody was able to get into it. But I got that alert, and I was able to immediately take action and go log into my account, change the password, do all these steps that we need to do to make sure we keep our account safe. And that alert was that big key. If I hadn't gotten that, I wouldn't have known somebody had logged into my account. I wouldn't have known that somebody was in there sifting through my email or sending emails out, using it as a spam relay or anything like that. I wouldn't have known. So these alerts are important because if somebody gets past all this stuff. And typically we don't alert on things like authentication failures. I'm not going to alert the user every time, they failed to log in, right? Because those were failures. That's not necessarily something I need to alert the user on. That's something internally I want to know, right? We want to check baselines and know, hey, how many failed authentication attempts do we get in a certain period of time? And internally we're looking at that, but that's not something the user needs to be bothered with. But they do need to know, hey, I've logged in. Now, what do I need to know about this? And so one of the cool things, and I got a couple examples here because there are some sites that do this. So let's just look here. We've got Slack and Google are just two examples I pulled that actually will do this. So if you sign in from a new account, or from a new device rather, then they will send an alert to your email address to say, hey, you've signed in from a new device. And you can see from the Slack version over here on the left that, it tells you what type of device it is, that it's an iPhone. It does its best to try to figure out location, but I can tell you the location is wrong. It includes the IP address. So if you know your IP address, you can check that and say, yep, that's my IP address. We're good to go with that, right? It includes some other information around your account, but it's letting you know, hey, you've signed in. Is this okay? And typically, if it's not okay, you need to take action. Flip over to the right side here with the Google for Gmail. And again, it sends it out actually to another email address, not even your current email address. It sends it to a linked email address and says, hey, there was a new sign in to your linked account. And if this wasn't you, then you need to check your activity. Now, the one thing I don't like about either of these is they have a bunch of links in them. So it wouldn't be hard to be able to create these as spam links and go out and send a spam email and say, hey, or just click this button to check your activity. So for me personally, one, I know I was signing in, so I didn't do anything besides just delete the email. But if I did think that it was a problem, to be honest with you, I would actually just open up my browser and go to my account, whether that's Slack or whether that's Gmail. I would go to that directly. I wouldn't use their links that they sent me. And then I would go in and I would determine, hey, is there something going on here? Right? I would check it that way because we're always taught, hey, don't click links in emails. And obviously they want to make it easy for you to be able to go check your activity. You could do simple checks like hovering over the links to see like, hey, do these really go where we think we're going? And if you feel comfortable doing that, but that's a little bit risky as well. So me personally, I'll actually just go open up my web browser new and go to that site and then go in and check my activity. But these type of things are letting us know, hey, something's happened. And if this was you, nothing to worry about. Keep going. If it's not you, then maybe you need to do something and log in and, maybe change your password, whatever. Sometimes I'll have steps to help you out. Sometimes I'll have things to say, contact us so we can make sure that everything is taken care of. Whatever that may be, just go in and follow those steps to make sure you do that. But it's that authentication alert that's actually helping us out and giving us that heads up that something has happened. And me personally, I like the one that gives you a little bit more information, although with the geocoding, sometimes that's a little misleading. I've seen it before where somebody's signed into like their Apple account and they get a message saying, hey, you just tried to sign in from New Jersey when they're in Florida. And they're looking at it like, oh, wait, I'm not in New Jersey. That couldn't have been me. So what do I do here? And they deny it and then they try it again and it keeps on up. Obviously use your best guess. I mean, if you're doing it right then and it's you get the alert as soon as you click the button, there's a good chance it's you, that the geocoding may be off a little bit there. And, that hopefully is you. But other than that, most of it actually is pretty good. Now, obviously, we want to make sure that we don't have overload of these type of alerts. So if you're constantly logging into an application, you don't necessarily want to get an alert every time that you log in. Now, most applications will do it and they set it up based on storing this device, right? Do you want to save this device or remember this device? Okay, I want to remember this device. So every time I log in on this device, it's not going to send me that alert. But if I log in from another device, maybe that device registers a different operating system. There's a bunch of different things that maybe it goes to the browser level. Maybe it checks region. or that GeoIP. So if you log in from another country, then it'll pop that message and send an alert to you. It's those type of things that we want to send that alert, because those are kind of the rarities, the outliers that we have there. Otherwise, like I said, I mean, if every time I go log in, I get that alert, like that's going to be overwhelming. And at some point, I'm going to get alert fatigue, and I'm just going to stop looking at them. I'm just going to ignore them. I'm going to set up a rule, send it to junk mail, right? Don't want that. I want something that's going to be able to identify when it's really not me. And so another good example of this was a story that I saw, came out a week or so ago, and this was big on LinkedIn. People were talking, lots of conversation about it, but Hyundai Motor is apparently going to let users or drivers use their fingerprints to unlock and start its new cars. And that's kind of cool. And, we could have a whole conversation, to be honest, about starting the car using fingerprints and, the authentication around this and everything going on. It's really an interesting concept. Raf and I talked about this on the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast this past week. So you can go out and check out that episode if you'd like. But we talk a lot about this one, and we really kind of get down into the authentication and the pros and cons and, the hype and the non-hype, all that stuff about doing this. But as we were talking about it, I was thinking about it, and I'm thinking, this is kind of interesting because obviously, there's backup devices here. I mean, you can't just have fingerprint authentication and then go take your car to the valet. How does the valet start the car? So there's got to be a backup of some sort. And same thing is, say you want to let maybe you've got a son or a daughter that's old enough to drive, but you don't want to let them just drive anytime they want. So they got to use a key, or they use the backup device to be able to do this. Well, in that case, that's an alternative method of authenticating. And when we talk about that alternative method, maybe you have something in a system like this where you're like, you know what, I'm not going to get an alert every time I use my fingerprint to authenticate to my car so I can start it up. But maybe I'm going to get an alert if the car starts, but I didn't use my fingerprint. So maybe I used the key. Maybe somebody broke into my car and, hotwired it somehow, bypassing everything, and the vehicle started, but there was no use of the fingerprint reader. Then I want to get that notification, right? Because my fingerprint, that's sort of the remember me device. Anything else? Well, that's something different. I should get an alert on it. Hey, my car just started. I didn't do that. Now, of course, the same thing. Oh, I let, my son or daughter use the vehicle. So, yep, I'll just ignore that one. I know it's them. They're using it. I get that alert at 3 o'clock in the morning while I'm in bed and nobody should be driving my car. Well, then that's something I need to take advantage of. And I've been alerted right away versus waiting until I get up in the morning and walk outside with my coffee and realize that, hey, wait a minute, my car's not here. So it's important that we understand the threat model of our application or whatever it is that we're implementing so we can understand what makes sense for creating the right type of alert out to our users. But I ask everybody out there, how many people developing applications actually have alerts set up that when somebody authenticates, it actually sends that alert out to them to say, hey, you've just logged in, or your account has just logged in. I know of a few people that do, and I know a lot of people that don't. And then the next question is, if you're not doing that, why not? What reasons do you have for not implementing that technology? And there may be good reasons for it. I'm not saying you're in the wrong not doing it. I'm just curious to know, if you're not doing it, is there other things that take priority over it? Maybe it just never came up, because that's certainly possible. But what reasons do we have for not implementing this? Same thing, I always ask, what reasons do you have for not implementing multi-factor authentication? These extra controls are good to help protect our accounts. And in this episode, I really wanted to focus on the idea of the alerts that come out, because those alerts are going to be that one thing that the user gets as immediate feedback to say, hey, something's going on with your account, right? This is something where I'm not currently at my account. I'm off doing something else, and then all of a sudden I get an alert, hey, you just logged in. No, I didn't log in. I need to stop what I'm doing, and I need to go, and I need to resolve this, right? So those alerts are important. So as you're out there building your applications, designing your applications, testing your applications, make sure that you're testing this type of functionality and you really understand the user story behind it, why you have it, and that you're actually testing it to make sure that it works as expected to help better protect our users. So if you have anything, questions, feedback, anything like that, feel free to send it to me, James at DevelopSec.com, or follow us on Twitter at DevelopSec, and share the conversation. And we'll talk to you on the next episode.